Hey guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this week's ukulele lesson, Steven's going to be teaching you a beautiful take on Where Is My Mind. Now this is a song that was originally written by the Pixies, but I think this arrangement is a more faithful adaptation of what Maxence Cyrin did in his version, which was solo piano. So if you're a fan of his take on this tune, I think you're going to really like this ukulele arrangement. So with that said, let's talk about it, because I got a chance to play through the entire arrangement, and I've got to say that this is going to be best suited for the advanced player. So if you're looking for something a little bit more challenging and you want to learn a song that is a bit unorthodox, in my opinion, then this is going to be a good one to jump into. So let's talk a little bit about the lesson, because in this video, Steven's going to be teaching you the first half of the tune. If you'd like to watch the part 2 lesson covering the second half, you can do so by clicking this link or going to the site rockclass101.com to search for the song's name. Now also on that page will be the tabs that you can print off to follow along with, plus the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. Now this is a great feature where you can hit play. You can watch the tabs scroll across in real time. You can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish. Just a great asset in learning this tune that much easier. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Steven to teach you how to play this. Don't forget to grab the low G ukulele, and I will catch you at the end of the video.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this lesson on Where Is My Mind, which is one of my favourite songs of all time. It was originally released by the band Pixies in 1988, but I was only 10 years old at that time and was probably more interested in Lego than American alternative rock music. So I first came to this song, like a lot of people did, when it was used in the movie Fight Club, and I've just loved this song ever since. However, this lesson isn't actually based on that original Pixies version. In 2009, a French pianist and composer called Maxence Cyrin released a hauntingly beautiful piano solo version of this tune. It just instantly gained enormous popularity. He took that raw energy of a kind of multi-layered alternative rock song and transposed it into this expressive, nuanced and introspective piano solo, which is instantly recognizable as that original Pixies tune, yet completely different. So if you're not familiar with either of these two versions that I'm talking about, it would definitely be worth getting yourself on YouTube and having a listen to them both. Even if the original tune isn't really to your taste, it's still worth a listen just to appreciate the quality of the songwriting, but then also the genius of Maxence Cyrin's transposition. Okay, so that's probably enough of me rambling on about the history of this tune. You're here to learn how to play it on ukulele, so make sure you're in low G tuning, and let's get into it. This piece is in 4/4 time, so we have 4 quarter note beats to each measure, and we want to remember to place a slight emphasis on beat 1 of each measure, and to a lesser extent a slight emphasis on beat 3 also. Now for the most part, this is essentially just a 4-chord song of G, E minor, B, C. But it is quite intricate in places, and some of the rhythms that we're going to play are quite tricky. So I think this probably will be a fairly challenging piece to learn, but once you've got it down, it is really rewarding to play, and that lends itself to some lovely expressive playing as well. So as you will have seen from the performance video, this is an entirely fingerstyle piece. So for the right hand, I'm just going to be using standard Pima picking technique, where the thumb plays the G string, the index finger takes the C, middle finger plays the E string, and the ring finger takes that A string. So if we start with the intro, the first 2 measures are fairly straightforward, and they should sound like this. Okay, so we're playing all 8th notes in both of these measures, so the rhythm here is just 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So measure 1, we're starting on this G chord, but we're not going to hold it like in the standard G chord way. So what we'll do for this is we'll use the second finger to play the E string at the 3rd fret, and then the first finger is going to bar the 2nd fret on the A string and the E string. We don't need the C string for these two measures, so we'll just ignore that one. So this seems strange, like why are we fretting the E string at the second when we're already fretting it here with the second finger? That doesn't seem to make sense. And for these two measures in isolation, there is no point, but the reason we're doing this will become apparent in measure 4. So bear with me for now, kind of trust me on this. This is how we want to hold this G chord for the start of this song. Okay, so once we're in position, it's fairly straightforward. All we're going to do on beat 1, we're going to play this E string at the third, and we're going to play it with the open G. And then we just alternate between the A and the E string all the way through these two measures really. So the and after beat 1, we just hit the A string, back to the E, back to the A, back to the E, back to the A, E, and then A. Okay, so we're just alternating strings there, starting on the E. Nice, and then into measure 2, we kind of just do that same thing again, but we don't play the G string in the bass on beat 1. So for the first part of measure 2, we just go back to this E string and then just alternate like we did before. Okay, so there's two measures again. Okay, so fairly straightforward to begin with there. Let's have a go at playing those two measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So on to measures 3 and 4 now. They should sound like this. Okay, so measure 3 is essentially just the same as measure 1 really, with a slight difference on beat 3. So the first half of the measure is exactly the same as the first half of measure 1. So we're in this G chord position, which we were in at the end of the previous measure, so we just keep the fingers on and then we play just as we did in measure 1. Okay, but then on beat 3, we are going to play the E string at the third, like we did in measure 1, but we're now going to add the third finger onto the C string at the fourth, and then that double stop there of the E string and the C string gives us our E minor chord there on beat 3. Then the rest of the measure just carries on like measure 1 did, so we go to the A string, then back to the E, and then back to the A to complete that measure. So measure 3, okay, so into measure 4 now, we have a slight change to the rhythm. We're going to be playing 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 4 and. So we have these couple of cheeky little 16th notes in here just to upset us a little bit. But if you keep listening to it and just practice that rhythm and just get it into your head, it is a little bit tricky, but as I say, a little bit of practice, I'm sure you'll be fine. Kind of just keep saying it to yourself, keep saying 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 4 and. 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 4 and. Just get that kind of embedded into your brain. 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 4 and. Okay, I'm sure you'll be fine with it, just might need a little bit more practice. Okay, so the start of measure 4, we're going from this G chord position into this B position, but we don't need the whole B chord to begin with, so what we'll do, we'll take this second finger off, so that we're on the E string, second fret, then our third finger now is going to want to jump from the C string over onto the G string at the fourth. And then for beat 1, we just play those two strings together, the E string and the G string. And then the and after beat 1, we go to the A string at the second, which we're holding already with our first finger bar. And then on beat 2, we need the C string at the third fret now, so we'll add the second finger onto that C string third just to complete the B chord at this stage here, but I wouldn't worry about putting that finger on until now, until beat 2. Okay, so beat 2 is this double stop of E string, C string. Then the and after beat 2, we have the A string second. Okay, so this is the first little change in the rhythm. That A string second there is just a 16th note, so kind of quite quickly after that, we want to hit the E string second. Okay, So just that measure 4 up to that point, just before beat 3, we have 1 and 2 and a little bit slower. Okay, and then into beat 3, we want to turn this into a C5 chord now. So what we'll do is we'll take the third finger off, we'll take the second finger off, but hop it over onto the E string at the third, but we will keep this first finger half bar on while we do this. And then on beat 3, we just want to hit the E string at the third with the open C. So that double stop there gives us our C5 chord. Okay, and then on the and after beat 3, we're going to hit that E string at the third once again, but this one's going to be a 16th note. So when we hit it, we want to quite quickly pull it off onto that second fret, which we're holding ready there with our first finger. Okay, so a little 2 16th notes. And then on beat 4, we put that finger back onto the third fret and pick it on beat 4. Then the and after beat 4, we go to the A string second, which we're holding already with our first finger bar. Okay, so just the second half of that measure 4. Three and a 4 and. A little bit slower. Okay, and then with the first half of measure 4. Okay, and then with measure 3. Nice. So let's have a go at playing those two measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So on to measures 5 and 6 now, they should sound like this. Okay, so most of this is just the same as measures 3 and 4. In fact, right up until beat 4 of measure 6, all of that before is identical to measures 3 and 4. So we'll not go over that again. If we pick this up on beat 4 of measure 6, what we want to do is hit the same note that we did in measure 4. So we have this E string at the 3rd fret. So the second finger has gone back on to take that on beat 4. And we pick that on beat 4. The difference here though is the rhythm. That's now ringing for like a dotted 8th note, like an 8th note and a half, which again is a bit tricky, but the next thing I'll mention shortly kind of is a little trick to kind of help with that. And then after that's rung for that dotted 8th note, we just hit that again for that last 16th note of measure 6. Okay, but you can see as well above the C5 chord we have these 3 letters RIT, short for ritardando, which just means that we're slowing the tempo down as we come through the second half of measure 6. So when we hit that C5 chord on beat 3, we just slow the tempo down there. And then if we think of that E string 3rd on beat 4 as like the end of the intro, and then we have this kind of pause, and then that final 16th note where we hit that E string again. That note really is kind of the beginning of the next section, the verse section, which we'll look at shortly. So that kind of gap there between the beat 4 and then the A at the end of the measure, we just kind of think of that as a kind of transition point, okay? So we don't want to be too blasé with the rhythm here, but because we've got that slowdown, we don't have to worry too much about kind of getting an exact dotted 8th note. We can kind of use that to add a bit of expression and a kind of transition point, like I say, into the verse. So I'll play those once again before playing them through together. So measures 5 and 6. Nice. So let's have a go at playing those through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So onto the B section now, the verse. This is where the rhythm gets a little bit trickier still, so it's definitely worth kind of immersing yourself in that performance video, but also the original piano version, especially if you're not already familiar with this tune. Once you can hear this tune kind of clearly in your head, you can go for the whole if you can sing it, you can play it approach. I think that'll really help here. But there is also a kind of common rhythmic theme in this section that I want you to get familiar with before we start looking at kind of what notes we're playing. If you can wrap your head around this rhythm that I'm going to show you, then it really will make learning this section so much easier. Okay, so to begin with, I want you just to get familiar with the rhythm 1 and a 2, 3 and a 4. Okay, so just copy what I'm doing there, kind of say this out loud with me a few times just to start embedding this rhythm into your brain. So 1 and a 2, 3 and a 4. 1 and a 2, 3 and a 4. 1 and a 2, 3 and a 4. Okay, so that's kind of the basis of this common rhythmic theme, but what complicates it just a little more is that we now want to add a 16th note before beat 1 and also before beat 3. So instead of just 1 and a 2, 3 and a 4, like we've just learnt, we're now going to have a 1 and a 2, a 3 and a 4. Do that again a bit slower. A 1 and a 2, a 3 and a 4. Okay, so I'll just do that on repeat a few times and you just kind of join in with me when you feel ready. So a 1 and a 2, a 3 and a 4. A 1 and a 2, a 3 and a 4. A 1 and a 2, a 3 and a 4. A 1 and a 2, a 3 and a 4. Okay, good. So I'd probably even pause the video at this point and just have a go at counting that rhythm out a few times on your own, just to make sure you've really got it down. So for measure 7 and 8, I'm going to include that last 16th note at the end of measure 6, just because it's part of the melody here and it kind of begins this first phrase that we're going to look at. So measure 7 and 8 with that last 16th note of measure 6 should sound like this. Okay, so with that last 16th note of measure 6, we have our kind of common rhythmic theme here for measure 7. So we have a 1 and a 2, a 3 and a 4. Okay, so at the end of measure 6, I didn't mention this before, but when we play that last 16th note of the E string at the 3rd with our 2nd finger, kind of as we play that note, we can take off this 1st finger half bar that we've had held throughout that A melody section, throughout the intro. That can come off, and then it kind of goes onto the A string at the 2nd as we transition into this verse, this measure 7. Okay, so when we start measure 7 on beat 1, we've got the 1st finger on that E string at the 2nd ready, 2nd finger's on the E string 3rd from the previous measure, but we just hit the A string with the open G for beat 1. Okay, and then on the and after beat 1, we hit that A string once again, and that's just a 16th note. So straight after that, we hit the E string at the 3rd, and then straight after that, we hit beat 2, which is this open G. Okay, with that open G, we just want to touch that a bit more gently because that's not melody, that's just a kind of bass note there just to fill that space. Okay, so just that first part of measure 7. 1 and 2. And then with that last 16th note of measure 6, a 1 and a 2. Okay, and then when we get to the A just before beat 3, we want to play the E string at the 3rd once again. We're holding that already, so we'll pick that, but as we pick it, lift this 1st finger off just to get it ready for the next thing we're going to do. Okay, so pick that E string at the 3rd on that A, and then straight after on beat 3, we're going to use the 3rd finger to drop onto the C string 4th. That 1st finger that we've taken off so it's ready is going to drop onto the E string 2nd. That second finger comes off, and then we have this E suspended 2 chord. Pretty kind of interesting chord, that one. I love that on beat 3 there. It sounds really cool. Yeah, so we hit that double stop on beat 3. Then the and after beat 3, we hit that E string at the second once again. And then on the A, just before beat 4, we're going to add this second finger onto the G string at the 4th. And then on beat 4, we're going to hit the C string at the 4th, which we're already holding, but we'll hit that a little bit more softly because it's not actually melody. That note there, we don't want to hear that too loud. Okay, so just that measure 7 again with that last 16th note of measure 6. Okay, so then into measure 8, we're playing the rhythm now. 1, 2, 3, 4 E and. Okay, so beat 1 is just this G string at the 4th fret. Although we are already holding it with the second finger, we want to actually change it over to the 3rd finger at this point, just to help us build up this B chord throughout this measure. So beat 1, just that G string at the 4th on its own. And then the reason we've freed up that second finger is so we can now put it onto the C string at the 3rd fret, ready for this double stop on beat 2. Our first finger was already on the E string at the 2nd, so just leave that on from before, and then both those fingers now are in position for that double stop on beat 2. And then for beat 3, all we're going to do is move all of that we're holding up 1 fret, so it's in a C chord position now. So up 1, and then play the G string at the 5th on beat 3. And then on beat 4, we'll hit the C string, which we're holding in the right position now, 4th fret. As we play that note though, drop that first finger down a fret to the 2nd so that we can play it on the E after beat 4, and then slide it back up to that 3rd for the and. So just that last little section there, 4 E and, we would have okay, so just measure 8 on its own. And then with measure 7 and the last 16th note of measure 6. Okay, good. So let's have a go at playing those 2 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So on to measures 9 and 10, they should sound like this. Okay, so the rhythm for measure 9 is 1 and a 2, a 3 and a 4 and. So we have slight variation on that kind of common rhythmic theme that we've been looking at. So we don't have that 16th note just before beat 1, and we have this extra 8th note after beat 4. But other than that, this is the same kind of rhythm we've been looking at. Okay, so at the end of measure 8, we had played this little run of notes. So we're in this position at the end of measure 8. To get into measure 9, all we want to do, lift that first finger over to the A string at the 2nd, take the other finger off, and then we're in position there for beat 1 of measure 9, the A string at the 2nd with the open G. Okay, then the and after beat 1, this is the same as measure 7, we hit that A string at the 2nd again. And then straight after, we play the E string at the 3rd, so the 2nd finger will go on to play that. And then straight after that, we have this slightly more gentle tap of the G string on beat 2. So that little first bit, just the same as measure 7. Okay, and then the A, just before beat 3, we hit this E string at the 3rd. We take the first finger off as we're doing that, just like in measure 7 again, so it's ready to play this E suspended 2 chord on beat 3. So first finger and 3rd finger go on. Okay, then the and after beat 3, we hit that E string at the second once again. And then straight after on the A, we take that off to play the open E. And then straight after that on beat 4, you hit this C string at the 4th, but try and hit that just a little bit softer because that one is just harmony. And then the and after beat 4, we put that first finger back onto the E string second and then play that a touch louder because that is now melody once again. Okay, so just that measure 9. Okay, then into measure 10, we're playing the rhythm here. 1, 2, 3, 4, ah. Okay, so the first 3 beats of this measure are the same as measure 8. So we want to put the third finger onto that G string at the 4th, pick that on beat 1, play that double stop on beat 2, move it up a fret so that the third finger's on the 5th, and then hit that G string at the 5th on beat 3. So that's just the same as what we did in measure 8, but this time on beat 4 we're going to hit this double stop of E string 3rd, C string 4th, which we're holding now as part of our C chord, and then let that ring for most of beat 4, but then we have this 16th note on that A at the end of this measure, which will then begin the melody for the next phrase. Okay, and that's going to be the E string at the 2nd, so the first finger will just drop down a fret to play that at the end of that measure. Okay, so measures 9 and 10 once again. Nice. So let's have a go at playing those 2 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. On to measures 11 and 12, we'll include that last 16th note at the end of measure 10 because that's part of the melody for this section. So measures 11 and 12 with that final 16th note of measure 10 should sound like this. Okay, so for measure 11, we're playing the rhythm 1 and a 2, a 3 and a 4, ah. Okay, and then with that last 16th note of measure 10, we can see we've got that kind of common rhythmic theme going on here. So at the end of measure 10, we were in this position. Okay, so what we'll do to get into measure 11, we'll use the second finger to play this E string at the 3rd. And the first finger could stay on or come off, doesn't really matter. We will need that shortly, but it could probably come off at this stage, and we'll just play the E string 3rd with the open G on beat 1. Then the and after beat 1, we hit that E string 3rd once again, but then straight after drop it down to this E string at the 2nd with that first finger going on. And then on beat 2, straight after that, this open G, which we play a little bit softer because that's not part of our melody. Okay, so just the first part of measure 11. And then the A just before beat 3, we hit this E string at the 2nd once again. And then straight after on beat 3, we add the 3rd finger onto the C string at the 4th, take that first finger off to open up the E string and play that double stop of E string open with the C string 4th on beat 3. Okay, and then the and after beat 3, we hit that open E once again, and then straight after on the A, we hit the E string at the 2nd, so first finger goes back on, and then straight after that on beat 4, open G again, softly though, because again it's not part of our melody. Then let that ring for most of beat 4, and then just before the end of the measure, this last 16th note, we're going to play the open E. So the first finger comes off, in fact the 3rd finger can come off as well. So all fingers off as we play that open E at the end of measure 11. Okay, So measure 11 once again with that 16th note from the end of measure 10. We'll try that a little bit slower. Okay, a 1 and a 2, a 3 and a 4, Okay, then into measure 12, we're playing the rhythm 1 and a 2, a 3 and a 4. So again, we're still with that common rhythmic theme. So beat 1 of measure 12, we're going to this B chord again, but this time we only want the outer 2 strings to begin with. So we'll have the first finger on the A string at the second, and then the third finger on the G string at the fourth, and play those 2 outer strings together on beat 1. Then the and after beat 1, take the first finger off and play the open A, but leave that third finger on the G string as we do that. And then the A after the and, we'll come into this E string at the 3rd fret. Second finger will take that. And then on beat 2, we'll come into the C string at the 3rd fret, and the first finger will take that. So an awkward little chord to hold there, but you should be able to squeeze your fingers on. And then that's there on beat 2. So just the first part of that measure 12. Okay, and then after beat 2, we let that ring for most of that beat, but then we have this 16th note just before beat 3, which is the E string open. So these fingers come off as we do that. Probably keep that third finger on as we pick it, because we're still kind of in this B chord sound. But then when we go to beat 3, we want to be in this C major 7 chord. So first finger will go onto the A string at the second. The third finger will come off as we do that. And then we play that A string at the second with the open C on beat 3. Okay, then the and after beat 3, we'll take that first finger off so we can play the open A. And then the A after the and is the E string at the 3rd. Second finger will take that. And then straight after on beat 4, pull it off onto the open E. Okay, so the second part of measure 12. A 3 and a 4. Okay, and then with the first part of measure 12. Okay, so in terms of kind of this expressive playing that I've mentioned, we have a couple of things to mention in this measure 12. So if we look at that Rit symbol there we've got again, we can see that we're slowing things down at the end of this measure 12. And then we also have this kind of fermata sign above beat 4. So very much kind of signaling the end of this verse section before moving into the chorus. Okay, so measure 12 kind of with those kind of expressive touches there as well. Okay, so if I play that again with measure 11 and the last 16th note of measure 10. Nice. So let's have a go at playing those 2 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So on to the C section now, the chorus. Measures 13 and 14 should sound like this. Okay, so the rhythm for these 2 measures is 1 and 2E, 3, 4. And that sounds quite tricky. It probably is quite tricky, but hopefully by this point you've kind of immersed yourself in this song enough to just really know it and have it embedded in your brain. Hopefully as I was doing that little playthrough, you could kind of sing along in your head. So I think if you are struggling with the rhythm for this bit, definitely go for that whole if you can sing it, you can play it approach, okay? Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Or as I've just demonstrated, even if you can't sing, you can still kind of sing it and play it. Okay, so if we go back to the start of measure 13, we're going to be in this new version of a G chord right up at the dusty end of the fretboard at the 14th fret here. But we should be okay getting there, because if we think about what we did at the end of the previous measure, measure 12, we played... Okay, so all our fingers are off at that point, and also we have that little fermata sign above beat 4, which just means that we kind of let that note ring for a little longer than what's notated, just to add that expression and kind of mark that transition into the next stage. So with all of that, that should give us plenty of time to get our pinky up to the A string at the 14th fret, which is where we want to be. But for beat 1 of measure 13, we're going to start with this open G. So we hit that on beat 1, then the and after beat 1, we now want this A string at the 14th. The pinky's holding that. And then on beat 2, we come to this double stop of E string at the 10th, first finger takes that, and C string at the 11th, which we'll play with the second finger. And then straight after that beat 2, we hit that A string 14th once again. So the first part of that measure 13. Okay, and then on beat 3, we're going to bring this second finger down the C string, take the pressure off. The other two fingers can come off completely, but use that finger just to kind of guide the hand down to the 7th fret, and then put it back on. When it gets to the 7th, then the third finger will take the A string at the 7th, and then play the C and the A together, and that's beat 3. Let that ring for a beat, and then on beat 4, we'll play this double stop of E string open with that C string at the 7th, but this double stop is just harmony, so just try and play that a little bit softer. Okay, so just that measure 13 again. Nice. And then into measure 14, we're keeping that same rhythm, but playing different notes obviously. So what we'll do for beat 1 is we want to come to this G string at the 4th fret, but again, we'll keep this second finger on the C string, third finger can come off, bring your hand down with the second finger still touching that C string, and then drop it onto the 3rd fret. As you do that, the third finger will take that G string at the 4th. Okay, and then just hit the G string on its own on beat 1. And then to complete this B chord now, we'll put the first finger onto the 2nd fret, barring across the A string and the E string together. So for now, we'll just play that A string on its own on the and after beat 1. And then on beat 2, we hit this double stop of the middle 2 strings, which we're holding as part of our chord. And straight after beat 2, we hit that A string second once again. Okay, so the first part of that measure 14. 1 and 2 E. Okay, and then on beat 3, we're going to come to the C chord where we have the pinky playing the A string at the 7th with the C string open. Okay, just a little point to mention there with that fingering, that is quite tricky and it's a bit of a stretch. When we play the first part of measure 14, we want all that to carry on ringing before we hit the C chord on measure 3, on beat 3, sorry. So try and kind of stretch your pinky up towards that 7th fret. You won't be able to get it all the way there, that's too much of a stretch unless you've got freaky hands, but just get it on its way, and then when we're just ready for beat 3, quickly hop it up to the 7th as you take the rest off, just to try and keep that chord ringing as long as possible. If we let that chord cut, I don't know, it just doesn't sound as good, I don't think, if we have that kind of staccato sound. We want it to ring for as long as possible. So just try and work your hands in a way that'll kind of allow that to happen. Okay, so that's beat 3, that C chord. And then on beat 4, we're going to come to this kind of other version of a C chord where we have the first finger on the A string at the 3rd. So pinky comes off, and then we play that with the E string open. And that's beat 4. Okay, so just that measure 14. And then with measure 13. Nice. Okay, so let's have a go at playing those 2 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll look at the next 4 measures together now, because there's a little bit of repetition here and there's not a huge amount going on in some of these measures. So measures 15 through to 18 should sound like this. Okay, so measure 15, as you'll have probably heard there, is just identical to measure 13, so we just play that again. And then measure 16 is different to 14, but we'll start it in the same way, in that we'll move that second finger down to the C string 3rd and add the 3rd finger onto the G string 4th to get in that B position. So we'll play the G string 4th on beat 1. And then on beat 2, we're just going to play this double stop of E string 2nd with C string 3rd. So the first finger will go onto that E string, but we don't need to bar it across the A string as well this time, because we're not playing the A string in this measure. So that double stop on beat 2, and then just move that whole shape up 1 fret to the C position and play those same strings again, but different notes because we've moved up a fret. So G string 5th on beat 3, and then the double stop of E string and C string on beat 4. Okay, so just that measure 16. But you can see again we've got that little writ symbol there, so we're slowing things down through the second half of this measure, just slowing the tempo down. And then when we go into measure 17, we're just going to play this C minor chord on beat 1. So the 3rd finger will stay on that G string at the 5th fret, but then the 1st finger will just do a full bar across all 4 strings to be in this kind of bar chord version of a C minor, and we play all 4 strings together on beat 1 and let that ring for the entire measure. Okay, so you could play that with a strum even, or do like a kind of roll the chord like I did. And that'll sound quite nice. So that's on the beat 1 of measure 17. We've got that little a tempo notation there, so that just means we're back to the kind of normal tempo following that slow down at the end of the previous measure. Okay, so then when we get into measure 18, we're going to come to this E minor chord. So the 3rd finger will take the C string at the 4th, pick that on beat 1. And then on beat 2, we'll add the rest of the E minor chord on. So the 1st finger will take the A string 2nd, and your 2nd finger will take the E string 3rd. Then play that double stop, A string and E string on beat 2. And then on beat 3, we want this D chord, so we'll bar across the 2nd fret with the 1st finger. Pinky will take the A string at the 5th, and the other fingers can come off. And again, we could roll that chord or strum that chord. That would sound quite nice. Okay, and that's pretty much the end of that section, but then we just have this little cheeky 16th note at the end of this measure, which will be the beginning of the melody for the repeat of the verse, which we'll look at in a minute. Okay, so the final note of that measure 18 is just this E string at the 3rd. 2nd finger will take that. I would probably take the rest of the chord off as you do it. and then we're ready then to go back to the start of the verse. Okay, so we'll get to that in a minute. For now, we'll just look at these 4 measures once again. So measures 15 through to 18. Okay, so as we go, I play those 4 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So once we've played measure 18, we then just go back to the start of measure 7 and we repeat that verse section through once more. We then go on to the chorus and we repeat the first 3 measures of the chorus once again. Once we've played measure 15, the second time round though, we then jump to measures 19 and 20. Okay, so measure 19 is actually just the same as measure 16. We do this B chord to the C chord. And then measure 20, we'll come to the C minor chord, but we'll stay in the C chord position for now. On beat 1, we'll hit that G string at the 5th. And then in time for beat 2, we'll put the first finger across all 4 strings at the 3rd fret, and then just play the C, the E and the A on beat 2. And then that rings out for the rest of that measure. Again, we can see the letters written above the C minor chord there. So once again, we're just slowing things down as we go through measure 20. So measures 19 and 20 should sound like this.
Alright guys, so congrats on learning the first half of this tune. Now if you'd like to learn the second half, Stephen's going to be teaching that in the part 2 lesson, which you can check out by clicking this link right here, or going to the site rockclass101.com and doing a search for the song's name. Now don't forget too, on that page are the tabs that you can print off to keep for your records, plus that really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. So you can literally hit play, watch that tab scroll across in real time, highlight bars, loop sections, slow it down, all that fun jazz. So guys, again, I hope you enjoyed learning the first half of this tune, and we will catch you in the part 2 lesson. Take care.